Hey everyone, K&Ro here.
Good morning again.
So today we want to share our plan for section hiking the Appalachian Trail through West Virginia and Northern Virginia. And we just so happen to be vacationing in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia.
How about that?
Yes, and so figured this is a great opportunity to open this video. And what better place to do that than the Appalachian Trail Conservancy Visitor Center. So let's take a high-level look at how we're going to hike the Appalachian Trail. West Virginia and the northern part of Virginia have a combined 57.5 miles of Appalachian Trail, with West Virginia having the distinction of the fewest miles of trail in all the 14 states. The section of trail begins in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, ending in Virginia at the boundary line of the Shenandoah National Park. The 2.4 miles listed on the ATC website for West Virginia covers the section of trail passing through Harpers Ferry National Historic Park. However, south of that area, the trail zigzags back and forth across a 20-mile stretch of border between the two states, adding additional miles that physically lay within the state of West Virginia. The trail here is rated from easy through Harpers Ferry to challenging further south in Virginia and is separated into 6 sections. The first section will be the easiest, passing through the town of Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, before entering Virginia. Section 2 closely follows the border between the two states, crossing back and forth several times. Section 3 is considered the most challenging and commonly referred to as the roller coaster. More on that later. Much of the 4th section passes through the G. Richard Thompson Wildlife Management Area. Section 5 introduces a nearly 1,000-foot ascent of high knob from either direction. And the final section will lead to the boundary of Shenandoah National Park. Our plan is to complete this section of trail in 5 hikes. The first hike will be the shortest and easiest, with accessible parking at either end. Things get more challenging on our second outing, which will be comprised of just Section 2. Parking is near the trail at both ends. Section 3 has parking nearby and is going to be the longest and most challenging hike. Still quite a bit challenging is Section 4, which runs along the slopes of a ridgeline dipping in and out of several ravines. Lastly, we will combine Sections 5 and 6 for our final hike leading to the boundary line of Shenandoah National Park. There's no parking at that spot, so we will continue south along the AT to the Compton Gap Trail, which will then take us to the nearest parking area.
West Virginia Section 1 starts right here at this billboard, right by the Maryland border. It's going to continue into the town of Harpers Ferry, right under that train trestle right there.
The first hike in West Virginia, Northern Virginia area will be the shortest and easiest. Encompassing just Section 1, it begins near the Maryland border in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, ending along Route 9 in Virginia, and there are no shelters in this section. There is ample parking available, a short walk from the start point at the Lower Town train station. But be warned, it can fill up very quickly, so get there early. $20 parking pass is required and can be purchased at a kiosk or at the Harpers Ferry National Historic Park Visitor Center, located a couple of miles from town. Public restrooms are available here. The start point for this section is at a bulletin board located at the end of the walkway that crosses the Potomac River from Maryland. But before you get started, take a moment to marvel at the confluence of the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers at the point next to the bulletin board. Now, when you're ready to get this thing going, just walk under the train trestle and onto Potomac Street, following the white blazes on old lampposts, and turn left to enter a courtyard. After walking through the courtyard, you'll cross over High Street and begin climbing the old stone staircase. Now, the trail south from here runs high above the Shenandoah River before dropping down to cross the river. After ascending about 800 feet and crossing into Virginia, it's an easy ridgeline traverse for several miles while closely following the border between the two states. At the top of that stone staircase, look for the ruins of St. John's Church on the right. Just past the church ruins and on the left, take a walk down to Jefferson Rock, where future President Thomas Jefferson once stood. Marveling at the confluence of the two rivers, he was inspired to write a famous paper in which he proclaimed the view was well worth the voyage across the Atlantic. Keep an eye out on the right for the Blue Blaze Trail that leads a quarter mile to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy Visitor Center. this side trail climbs a little higher to the local streets that lead to the center. Now, it's well worth taking this little side trip. If you are planning to complete the entire trail, whether as a through hike or in sections, they will take your picture for their logbooks. After retracing your steps back to the AT, continue south down to US 340, cross over Shenandoah Street, and take the pedestrian walkway over the Shenandoah River Bridge. On the other side of the river, you'll see a staircase that goes down to cross under the roadway. As you begin a long ascent, look for a seasonal viewpoint of the Shenandoah River. In 3 miles, the trail will cross a power line easement where some views are possible. The view to the east of Short Hill Mountain is probably the best, but any views to the west may only be available during the winter months. There's just 1.5 miles left to this section now before ending at the shoulder of Virginia 9. Just a few yards across the state line into West Virginia is the parking lot that holds about 12 cars. Well, that was a pretty easy start to West Virginia and Northern Virginia, but things are about to get more challenging, and you're not entirely done with West Virginia yet either. The Harper House is the oldest surviving building in Harpers Ferry. Now, you can see all the historic buildings in our Harpers Ferry Lower Town video tour. And while this section is probably the easiest part of the trail, Section 2 is going to be the most rugged. Our second hike will be all of Section 2, a long and rugged section with numerous elevation changes and some rocky footing. Stretching from Keys Gap, Virginia to Snickers Gap, Virginia, the trail closely follows the state border, dipping in and out of West Virginia numerous times. Parking for about 12 cars is alongside Route 9 on the West Virginia side, and it's just a short walk to the start point on the Virginia side of the border. Cross the roadway here to begin this section. After ascending 1,500 feet within the first 2 miles, the trail mostly runs along the ridgeline. Although the following section is known as the roller coaster, the wild ride actually begins as the final 3 miles of this section. Those first 2 miles are a steady incline leading to a seasonal viewpoint to the east. In another mile, look for the blue trail on the left that leads to the David Lesser Memorial Shelter. It has a deck with a bench, a swing, and a fireplace. Sounds like a great place to stop for a rest. There is also a privy here, and the trail leads another 1/4 mile to a spring water source. After your stay at the shelter, take the side trail on the right for a limited view of Shenandoah River and the Shenandoah Lake from Buzzard Rocks. Be sure to take the left fork on this Blue Blaze trail. Continue along the ridgeline for a couple more miles to yet another Blue Blaze trail on the right, leading to a nice westerly view from a quartzite outcropping. 2 side trails leading to the Blackburn Trail Center will come up quickly on the left. Staffed by members of the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, the center offers bunk beds, tenting sites, a shower, water spigot, and a privy. After a few more miles along the ridgeline, get ready to ride the Wild Roller Coaster, a crazy rapid-fire series of steep elevation changes spanning more than 13 miles. It all begins right here. At the bottom of the first dip in the roller coaster, the trail crosses a boulder field with a stream running beneath it. The name Devil's Racecourse comes from the more popular boulder fields of the same name in Maryland and Pennsylvania. The trail then takes a twist in the next half mile to an excellent westerly view over the Shenandoah Valley from Crescent Rock. Now, you may want to take some time to explore this geological wonder. A trail descends to the base of the cliff where you can look back to see the geological fold that forms a crescent in the rock. Keep in mind, though, it may not be advisable to descend the cliff in warmer months due to the presence of rattlesnakes. And after weaving back and forth across the state line since you left Harpers Ferry, you'll cross one more time, leaving West Virginia behind for good. Continue riding that crazy roller coaster for another couple of miles to reach the end of this section at the shoulder of Virginia State Road 7. Now, you just passed through the parking lot on Pine Grove Road where you probably left your car that morning. There's room for several vehicles here. Or maybe you parked just down Route 7 at a much larger lot, in which case you have a short walk along the highway to reach your car. Either way, congratulations on completing your first challenging section of this area. It was a nice warm-up for what's to come.
The trail passes right by Jefferson Rock. We're in October around 1783. Thomas Jefferson stood right on this rock and talked about the beauty of the area. We've got section 3 ahead of us, which is often referred to as the roller coaster, which is going to be the most difficult part of this West Virginia section.
And it's also the first section to run completely in Virginia.
Okay, good to know.
Now I hope you're up for a challenge, because that's exactly what this next hike is going to offer up. Section 3 runs between Route 7 in Snickers Gap, Virginia to US 50 in Ashby Gap, Virginia, and is most associated with the infamous roller coaster section of trail. There are 2 parking choices. Pine Grove Road lot is the closest to the section's start point. A much larger lot is just a short distance down Route 7 with a blue connector trail leading back to the AT. To start this section, cross Route 7 and turn left, heading east along the shoulder for 1/10 of a mile, then turn right at the guardrail. The trail begins to ascend almost immediately, and you'll quickly understand why this will be one of the more difficult sections along the entire trail. A quick look at the elevation graph on a custom All Trails map we created for this section will show you why it's called a roller coaster. You can find links to custom maps for all the sections below in this video's description. At the top of the first peak, you'll be treated to an outstanding view of Shenandoah Valley. There's also a trail to the left leading down to Bear's Den Hostel. The property has both a lodge and hiker hostel. There are group and individual campsites here. There are bunk rooms, private rooms, a store, kitchen, dining, and laundry facilities here. You can check their website for rates and additional information. After diving into a deep ravine and climbing back up to the peak of a ridge, Lookout Point offers a seasonal view of mountains to the south. At the bottom of the next ravine is the Blue Blaze side trail that leads 1/10 of a mile to the Sam Moore shelter. There's a privy here, as well as a covered picnic table and some tenting sites. You'll also cross a spring water source along that side trail. Keep riding that coaster another 1.5 miles to a nice view west from Buzzard Hill. Now the next mile dips slightly into Reservoir Hollow and crosses the main creek. Pool Falls is just 160 yards upstream and may be well worth a little detour to check it out. Perhaps enjoy the falls while having lunch. After climbing yet another peak, now remember you're on the roller coaster, the trail dips into Ashby Hollow, crossing Morgan Mill Stream, where you can find a campsite along the east side of the trail. Now get ready for a nearly 600-foot ascent in under a mile to an easterly view from Piney Ridge. Hang in there for 2 more crazy miles to finally reach the end of the roller coaster along a 300-foot stretch of boardwalk crossing a marshy area. Fortunately, the Rod Hollow shelter comes up soon after, where you can kick back and take a nap after surviving the roller coaster. There's a spring, a privy, and some tenting sites here as well. Get a good rest, because there's still another 3.5 miles left to this section. It finally ends at the post in the median of US 50. There's a PATC parking lot off Route 601 with an access trail leading to the AT about 2/10 of a mile north of where we ended here. Well, alright, respect if you completed this section in one piece. The remaining sections should feel like a walk in the park compared to this one. Harpers Cemetery is right along the Appalachian Trail after Jefferson's Rock, and contains the burial sites of the Harper family, including the town's namesake, Robert Harper. Now, much further south in section 4, the trail has gone through a major reroute about 20 years ago. Section 4 will be our 4th hike and a welcome relief after that last section. Picking up from US 50 in Ashby Gap, Virginia, we have 2 shelters this time and a state park with camping facilities before finishing along Route 55 in Manassas Gap, Virginia. Use the PATC parking lot on Virginia 601 and take the access trail connecting to the AT 2/10 of a mile north of the official start point. Now, once you are back to that post in the median of US 50, you can begin to take your first steps into this next section by crossing the highway and entering the woods. Section 4 runs mostly along the eastern slopes of the Blue Ridge Mountains, having been rerouted onto publicly acquired lands such as the Avoca Farm Tract and the G. Richard Thompson Wildlife Management Area. In In about 1.5 miles, you'll enjoy panoramic views from the open fields of the Avoca Farm. Now, if you're feeling particularly adventurous on this day, take the 1/2 mile long light blue blazed Ambassador White House Trail to a spectacular overlook of Paris, Virginia. But remember, you're adding a full mile to the overall section hike. Even if you skip that little detour, there are more views to be had from the open fields of the Avoca Farm further along the AT. After leaving the Avoca Farm and crossing a gas pipeline right-of-way, the Blue Blaze North Rim Trail will be on the left. It leads 1.7 miles down to the Sky Meadows State Park Visitor Center, and it's an option for restroom use or bailing out in an emergency. But you can also take that trail just 0.9 of a mile to the Orange Blazed Gap Run Trail that leads 0.4 of a mile to the Sky Meadow Campgrounds. There are tenting sites, fire pits, toilets, and a hand pump well available here. You can check the park website for fees and reservation information. Just beyond the North Rim Trail Junction, the AT enters the G. Richard Thompson Wildlife Management Area. Take caution when hiking through here the next 7 miles during hunting season. Now, over the next 2 miles, there will be a couple of alternate parking options along this section that are accessible by side trails. After crossing the creek in Whiskey Hollow, look for the Blue Blaze Trail on the left leading to the Whiskey Hollow Shelter. This is a relatively new shelter that replaced the older Dick's Dome shelter, and it has a privy on the hillside. 3 more optional parking areas are available over the next several miles. A steep set of switchbacks and another 4 miles after leaving the previous shelter will bring you to the Manassas Gap Shelter. There's a spring here and a privy. The final few miles will descend on switchbacks and stone steps, cross under Interstate 66, and end at the shoulder of Virginia 55. And how awesome is this? The parking lot is right there on the opposite side of the road with room for 10 to 12 cars. And if that lot happens to be full, there's an even larger lot just before crossing under Interstate 66. Fantastic. Well, guess what? There's just one more hike to complete Northern Virginia.
All right, in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, we're here at Storer College, which was formed at the conclusion of the Civil War to ensure that college education was available to all races, especially the newly freed slaves. So our final hike of Northern Virginia we're going to combine sections 5 and 6, and that's going to lead us to the Shenandoah National Valley.
National Park. Shenandoah National Park boundary. For a final hike in Northern Virginia, combining sections 5 and 6 will make for a challenging day. At 8.2 miles, section 5 runs from Route 55 in Manassas Gap, Virginia to US 522 in Chester Gap, Virginia. The small parking lot on Virginia 55 is right across from the starting point of this section. But remember, there's an even larger lot option just down Route 725. And when you're ready to kick things off, cross Virginia 55 and enter the woods alongside the parking lot. Section 5 begins with a mile-long 600-foot ascent, followed by a several miles long 900-foot ascent along the slopes of High Knob. Now, after crossing Goose Creek and some railroad tracks, steep switchbacks up that 600-foot ascent will lead to an excellent view down Trumbo Hollow from a cleared field. Dipping down across Route 638, the trail then begins the ascent of High Knob, and within 2 miles, look for the side trail to the Jim and Molly Denton Shelter. The shelter has a large porch with a bench, covered picnic table, fireplace, privy, spring, and some tent sites. There's even a shower available here, if you can believe it. All the comforts of home, right? Well, almost. Continuing another couple of miles and crossing a 500 kilovolt power line right away, look for a side trail leading to Mosby Campsite and Tom Seelock Spring. There are benches here and several tent sites, but other than that spring, there are no other facilities. Just as you begin descending the slopes of High Knob, the trail crosses into a 4,000-acre wildlife preserve known as the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. Camping and hunting are prohibited for the remainder of this section. Continue descending for another couple miles to reach the end of Section 5 at the shoulder of US 522. Now, if you've had enough for the day, then I hope you left your car in the lot directly across the road along the opposite shoulder. Now, that was a pretty good workout, but the day is probably still young, so why not continue into Section 6 and just finish Northern Virginia right now? That's what we're going to do. The final section is only 3.6 additional miles, but it will be steep as it begins climbing the mountains into Shenandoah National Park. Just cross US 522, passing through that parking lot and onto a 270-foot boardwalk that passes through a marshy area along the western shore of Lakefront Royal. These last few miles will have 1,600 feet of ascent and only 300 feet of descent. In 1.5 miles, a Blue Blaze Trail on the right leads to the Northern Virginia 4-H Educational Center. They do have water available here between April and October if you are desperate. Otherwise, just wait for the next shelter coming up real soon. Speaking of which, a mile of steep switchbacks leads to the Tom Floyd Wayside Shelter. Now, there's more than one side trail to access the shelter, which has a privy and a couple of tent sites. Those side trails also lead downhill to Ginger Spring. Okay, you're almost done now. Ascend steeply up a cliff for one final view from Possum Rest. And just 50 yards past there, cross the boundary of Shenandoah National Park to officially complete the Northern Virginia section of the AT. Now, just within the park boundary is this kiosk where backcountry hikers used to be able to obtain a permit for overnight stays within the park. But as of January 2024, permits can only be obtained through the park website now. You still got some walking to do to reach your car though, so continue south on the AT for 0.2 of a mile and turn left onto the dirt Compton Gap Road. And take the dirt road for a final 0.7 of a mile to the small parking lot at the end of Route 610. Wow, that was a pretty intense finish to Northern Virginia, but there's still several hundred miles more to go in the state, beginning with Shenandoah National Park. We're going to wrap things up here at the Harpers Ferry National Historic Park Visitor Center. We hope you enjoyed our plan for hiking West Virginia and Northern Virginia sections of the Appalachian Trail, while also enjoying a couple of the local sites. I know I can't wait to get back here and kick things off.